Okay,
Something not plugged in.
no, it's gonna get there.
Oh, we get there. Okay, sorry.
I think it'll get there. It should get there.
Come on, come on.
Yeah, let's curious, eh? We've got the thing saying, looks like it's on. Here, can you pass me the remote, please, Doug? I'm gonna try something. It could be that it was reset to a different, yeah. So let's go back. Picture. Okay. Hold on a second. Oh. Here we are. And HGM.
You're watching Netflix.
There we are. Thank you. Okay, so we just started this tshuva yesterday. We have a Rebbe in our school who is not capable of maintaining decorum in the classroom. What do we do with him? Are we allowed to fire him? And do we have to pay him anything as a severance or anything like that? So the tshuva is as follows: HaGemara omeret b'masechet bava metzia shemelame tinokot hu ke musra v'oimed, that a teacher is already considered on probation. Musra is like has from the word hasra, right? Already warned, already forewarned, meaning that it's already as if he's on probation and already forewarned. That he can be fired without any warning if he's not a good teacher. Why? And the reason is, now this is pretty awesome stuff. The responsibility of a teacher is incredibly significant because he causes a loss that is irretrievable to his students. Because every time that he gets in that classroom and is not teaching, they are not learning. And that time can never be retrieved. In other words, that kid is never going to go through third grade ever again. You hope, right?
You never know.
Yeah, right. V'kol shekein imu malamed otam b'ta'ut divrei shibush d'shabeshta kevin da'ol. And this is certainly true if he teaches them in a confused or distorted manner, because anything that is distorted, the Gemara says, anything that is confused, once it goes in, it goes in. So if a child is learning from a teacher who is feeding him mangled information that in the teacher's mind makes perfectly good sense, but he's a very poor communicator, then the child's whole impression of that discipline, of that study, is going to be, this stuff makes no sense. And that's a horrible thing. So there's a tremendous liability that a teacher has. The Kos of Harambam, Malame Tinoikos Shepasha B'Tinokot V'lo Limedotam, the Rambam writes that if there's a teacher who is negligent in his education and does not teach them, Olimedotam B'Taut, or teaches them erroneously, Misalkin Oto B'li Hatra'a, Mipnei Shehu Kimutre Ve'omed. He can be fired without any forewarning, without any, being placed on probation. Why? Because he's already considered forewarned from day one. In other words, other jobs may require some, what's the word I'm looking for? Where you give someone forewarning, you give them, yeah, warning. You give them warnings, right? Right, but a teacher doesn't need any warnings. So this is pretty scary stuff.
This is by a Rebbe or an English teacher?
Yeah, so it's funny because the union would never agree with this, right? Yeah. Right. Your daughter's a teacher, right? Yeah, so this would never fly in the union. The union would say there was no disciplinary warning, and there was no this, and there was no note in her file, and this and that. So, right. But it would seem that, look, whatever education a child needs, regardless of whether it's Torah or Chol, is necessary for this child's upbringing. So I don't know that there should necessarily be a distinction, but you raise a good question. Do the same standards apply to an English teacher as they do to a Rebbe? But certainly the standards are very high for a Rebbe. So then he writes, "V'hadavar talui harbe gam b'talmidim." But we have to say that a lot of this depends on the students also. You go into what's one of those rough schools in the Bronx,
Jane and Finch.
or Jane and Finch, you go, well, everything is tame by comparison in Canada,
Right.
But one of these schools that they highlight in the movies from the Bronx,
Lean on me.
yeah, right. In meduber bekita regila shekol more mishtaleta tal talmidim. He says, let's say it's a school where in all of the other classes that are run by other teachers, they're able to maintain control and discipline. V'rak hamoreh hazeh lo mishtalet. And it's this teacher who's the exception. He can't keep control. Harei shechaser lo et hayeda lihiyot moreh. He basically lacks the skill to be a good teacher. And this is, it sometimes people go into chinuch because they're very idealistic and they want to do something that is going to be pleasing to Hashem, and they want to do, but you know what? You just don't got it. You don't have the stuff that is necessary to make you into a good teacher. I see this in my industry too. You have some young men who want to become pulpit rabbis. Some of them have it and some of them don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you figure it out over a while. I don't think it applies to lawyers. Lawyers manage to fake it.
You would call this incompetence, right?
Right,
But
right.
there are plenty of competent teachers and lawyers.
Yeah.
That's across, I would say,
All you have to
across the
do is-
board, all professions.
There's a big difference in passing the bar and then practicing.
Yes.
Same with teachers.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's true in every profession. I was just kidding, Mark.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
saying that in law, in employment law, one of the grounds is incompetence. So either you're incapable, like this guy may be incapable of classroom management or build tires or whatever, or he might be capable, but his performance in that area is so bad that, he's still considered to be incompetent.
Yeah, because let's say he is capable, but he doesn't care anymore.
Right, doesn't care,
He
whatever.
just gave up. He couldn't. Yeah.
But it seems like there's
So you could
two
find-
different things, is controlling the class, which we're talking about here, or teaching them the wrong stuff.
Well, at the end of the day,
It's not-
That would also be- he
the
might-
children are not being educated.
I agree,
That's the primary issue.
right.
Primary issue is, are the kids being educated or not? And if the children are not being educated, that is irretrievable time that has been lost from these students' education. And therefore, so let's just finish this paragraph. He says that if the other teachers are able to maintain decorum in the classroom, and this one guy is the lo yitzlach, he can't do it, so he doesn't have the capacity to teach. And therefore, it seems obvious that you can fire him without any warning. Aval ima talmidim mufra'im. Now, this is a very interesting word, mufra'im. They're disturbed children. Sheyesh bahem bayot shel mishmat. That they have some significant, some kind of behavioral problem. Afal pisha hamora lo posheya. Aval lo yitachen lahashir et hakita shelo yilmedu kol hashana. So let's say the teacher is not incompetent. I mean, if you put him in the right environment, he'll be a very good teacher. But in this environment where the kids are really problem kids, it's a tough school in Stuyvesant and or whatever I think that's where my dad went to school. But back then it was a good school, or some of these other places. Bevadai shetzrichim lahavi mora miyuchad. Then you have to bring in a teacher who has special education skills. Okay, Kamo shepasak maran b'shulchan aruch sheyicholim l'salek melamed mitafkido kasher motzim melamed tov yoter. That you are allowed to remove a teacher from their post, even if they're perfectly fine, if you can find a better teacher. Ki hachova klape hatalmidim kodemet lechova klape hamelamed. That's a really important principle. And it's important for you to know, especially because you sit on a school board, that the obligation to the students supersedes the obligation to the educator. Primary priority, our number one priority is the students. Number two priority are the teachers. So if there's ever a conflict between the students and the teachers, get rid of the teacher. Now,
I have that in my time.
The opposite of my
I know.
school too. It was always the teachers first, the parents next, and then the students.
now we may want to take a look at that inside and see if there's any qualification. This is actually a halacha in Yoredeya, Siman Reish Mem Hey. But let's see. Avot tzarech l'shalem lamoretz charo lemeshech kol shnat halimudim kevan shuhu lo pasha. But assuming that the teacher was not negligent, but he doesn't have the tools to teach, you have to pay him for the rest of the year if you're going to get rid of him. But that's in a situation where no other teacher would be able, regular teacher would be able to control the classroom. You need to bring in, let's say, Harvey Keitel into the classroom in order to that's a Hollywood reference, right? And every regular teacher, if every regular teacher would not be able to control this classroom, and so you have to get rid of this guy because he's a regular teacher, then you have to pay him for the rest of the year, right? Aval im hamore pasha o shu lo mishalet al yeladim regilim efshar lesalko v'lo latet lo et scharo. But if this teacher would not even be able to maintain decorum among a regular group of students, right? In other words, the problem is the teacher, not the students. So then you can fire him without any severance or paying him out for the year. Just say, listen, we're really sorry it didn't work out, but you don't have what it takes to be able to control decorum. Maybe go back, take some additional courses, and see, in education, and see if you can learn how to control a classroom. But if that's not something that you're capable of doing, you may want to choose a different profession.
I'd take a different time. I would say train the guy while you have him. And amongst training courses, everybody's training.
Do you think that'd be the first
I'm not
question?
convinced that everyone's trainable.
It doesn't matter.
So in other words,
How do you make the determination? The courts have to base it, they say, well, you were just a little bit below the good. How do you determine whether the kids are mental cases or whether the teacher is no good?
well, I think, you're right. He's making it sort of black and white, right? And it's not black and white.
He
So-
also partially mentions if it's a class of special need children, that maybe that's something different as well. So I mean, there's a lot of.
How
there's
do
a lot
you
of
determine
variables.
all these things? Who's the
And
discriminating?
what if the
factor?
class that he has is like from 3:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon for 5 and 6 year olds who by that time are like blitzkrieg anyway, and they're not going to concentrate.
Mhm.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a
Well, there's
number
other
of
factors.
factors.
I think that certain schools get a reputation over time of being like, this is the impossible school.
Or certain classes also.
Could be. So the Makor Baruch, in explaining why you'd have to pay a teacher out for the year if it's a problem class, says that b'derech klal b'chiyai gavna sha'apoel lo oved yesh l'shalim lo kapol batel v'lo tashlim alei. we had this principle of Paul Bottle before. We've seen this before. You don't have, if you're firing a guy in the middle of a job and you haven't given him an opportunity to find other work because it's the middle of the year, yes, you do have to pay him out, but you shouldn't have to pay him a full wage. You just have to pay him what a person would be willing to take to sit home and not do anything instead of having to go out and do strenuous work. So why do you have to pay him out his regular salary? Why don't you just have to pay him like a reduced fee, like 50% or 2/3, like we learned before? Amnam, Pasak Moran b'Shulchan Aruch, Di'im haya oto poel mehachofrim o ovdei adama b'chayotze b'hem. However, the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Shin Lamed Hey that if the worker is used to doing strenuous work, he's a digger or he's a farmer, and so forth, shedarkam litroach harbe v'im lo ya'asem malacha yechele, that his whole daily routine is strenuous work, and if he stays at home, he's going to get sick. In other words, his bodily constitution will deteriorate. Then notein lo kol scharo mishalem. Then you have to pay his full wage. So, in other words, Verot Salomar de Paul sha'adif lo lavod me'asher le'shev batel, that if there are certain workers who are better off working than sitting home and doing nothing, sitting home watching those TV commercials about learning how to be a technician, right? Those daytime commercials, which are meant for people who are out of work, or for seniors, right? They either have daytime TV. Last time I checked, has two types of commercials. They have for medication for senior citizens, and that always says, check with your doctor before you.
That's 400 things.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then all the disclaimers, all the disclaimers.
If you have high blood pressure,
Right.
Don't take it.
Yeah. And then the other one is that, they have these technical or trade schools that they have you apply for. So a guy can go insane. If a person is used to working and he would much rather be working than sitting at home and doing nothing, so then you do have to pay them when you fire them without giving them an opportunity to get another job. Then you do have to pay them their full salary. Tzarech l'shalim lo scharo mushlam v'lo kapol batel, kivin shelo hayamaskim l'shevet batel, because this person wouldn't want to stay at home doing nothing. Because of hatur de belom de Torah, lo shayach l'shalim lehem kapol batel, kivin shahabetei lakash lehem dili lo avichalshi. And therefore, the Torah writes in a similar vein, when it comes to a Torah scholar, sending them home and telling them that they can't teach is torture for them, because the less that they're teaching, the more weak their mental acuity becomes. V'chein pasuk harama, and the Rama writes the same thing. Aval hosef sham v'zeloshana, but the Rama adds by saying, had tzrichen liten l'malamed scharo mishalem, that when you fire a teacher, we require you to pay him his full salary. Hainu dafka imnir lebeistin shenehenem bilimudo yoter mibitulo, that he actually enjoys teaching more than staying at home and not teaching. Aval imnir lebeistin shenoach lo bebitul, but if the beistin sees that the reason why he's such a terrible teacher is because he hates teaching, so then eino nosen lo elo kishar pol batul ad kan l'shana. So then you don't have to pay him the full salary. You can give him like a pol batul, which would be either 50% or 2/3 of the regular salary. And therefore, in our situation as well, you have to make a determination about this particular teacher. That if you can tell that this is pure agony for him, he's passionate about teaching in the classroom. He may be lousy at it, right? But he loves to be in the classroom and write things on the board and to have an interaction with the students, but just he doesn't know how to do it well. So if you need to fire him, but you can tell that he's in agony because he can't come back to the classroom, he's mamish crying all day, V'hayamadif l'lamda me'asher l'sheves batel, he would much prefer to be back in the classroom. As yesh l'shalim lo scharo mushlam, then you have to give him his full salary. Aval im noach lo b'mesha achshav lo tzarach l'lamed l'talmidim yesh l'shalim lo kepol batel. But if he actually prefers not going to the classroom, he feels relieved because, he thought that he had to do this because when he was in Koilel, he didn't have a backup plan, right? And that's unfortunately what happens. A guy will go into Koilel, doesn't have a plan. He knows he's going to need to support his family eventually, but doesn't have a backup plan, never went to a trade school, never went to university, doesn't know what to do. So he decides, well, I'll try my hand at chinuch, which is what some of my chaverim did. And eventually they got out because, I just actually ran into a couple of guys that I went to yeshiva with, and I hadn't seen them in years. And they explained to me the trajectory of their lives. They started off in chinuch because we were all, in a yeshiva, which emphasized the importance of Jewish education and trying to get into Klei Kodesh and to be a mechanech. And a couple of them, took that path. And the problem is with Jewish education, and it's a sad reality. I say this without any judgment or commentary yet, but the sad reality is that there's no long-term career good prognosis for Jewish education. When you get into Jewish education, you either are excellent, and so you advance from the classroom to the administration to becoming a Rosh Yeshiva, or you remain a mediocre or good but not excellent educator, and eventually you age out of the classroom, where you no longer are relevant to the students, and they're looking for a younger teacher, and this Rebbe has aged out. And this is a sad reality. And the problem is, so what do you do about it? I don't know if there's anything to do about it, but sometimes a Rebbe might have gotten into chinuch because he was idealistic and wanted to do the right thing, but he simply doesn't have the passion or the skills for it, doesn't enjoy it. So if you have to fire him because he wasn't an effective teacher, and you can tell that he's relieved not to have to come back to the classroom, you know that it was torture for him. So then you don't have to pay him his full salary, you pay him like a poil bottle. So, but it's interesting. You would ask the Beis Din to make that assessment. And I guess they would have to call the guy in and say, listen,
You're terrible.
no, they wouldn't say that to him. The Beis Din would say, what do you think went wrong? What do you think went wrong? They would do like an exit survey to the Rebbe. What do you think went wrong, Rabbi so-and-so? And if he says, well, I don't think I really enjoy teaching. So just getting that answer, that would immediately give the Beis Din the indication that the severance should be not a full salary, it should be kapoil bottle, right? But if the guy says, I don't know, I love my Talmidim, they love me, we were getting along so well, I was excited to come into the class every day, and I don't know, just something didn't click. And then he breaks down emotionally crying. So then the Beis Din would say, it could be that he's a good actor, but give him his salary for the year. Seriously. In other words, that's essentially what he's saying.
You really think the first was it like example? The guy said, "No, I wasn't into it. It wasn't like they want their money.
You might not realize that this is.
They think they're great, even though they stink. Everybody thinks they're great at what they do."
No, I don't think that's true.
Say, you know what? I just didn't like. Why is he going to Beis Din in the first place? He wants to get his money.
No, the school.
Or to let go of him.
The school says we're going to have to let you go. But in order to determine what we should pay you, we want you to sit down and talk with Rabbi so-and-so. And they don't tell him more. And maybe the guy doesn't know this halacha. How many people know this halacha except the guys in this room, right? That there's a differential as far as whether you have to pay him a full salary or like a poil bottle, depending upon his passion.
Maybe schools should let everybody know this halacha before they hire him.
Yeah, yeah. It's really quite an interesting criterion, right?
I think, haven't we learned somewhere, we had another one of these where someone wanted to get an employee?
Yeah,
We discussed as to whether they had to pay them like so much salary or not so much salary, depending on how they got rid of them and what their next job opportunity was.
right.
But in this case, we're not even looking at that. We're basically saying he's either good or he's bad, he's interested or he's not interested, you're gonna get paid this much. And what if it takes him, what if it's the start of the year and he's now got a whole year he's gonna go through because nobody's hiring teachers
In the middle of
in
the
the
year.
middle of the year,
Yeah.
right? So what's he gonna do for his income for the next 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is?
Well, he'll get, let's say, two-thirds
Maybe.
of his salary.
Maybe the whole thing.
Now, you have to also remember, Rav Sharaga Paskind, that there's a third category where he gets nothing because he's a bad teacher.
Right.
Objectively, he's a bad teacher, and that this is not because of the students. When he's a bad teacher, you can fire him, no severance.
And that, without, basically without proof, you just pull him a bad teacher.
No, there is, it's with cause.
But you're just, it's a judgment, he's a bad teacher.
Yeah.
No, based on,
Mhm.
wish I plugged that to some university lecturers.
Now, could he take the school to a Basin?
Of course.
You can take anyone to Basin, but who's the Basin going to listen to? The Basin's going to say, listen, the administrator this guy's, he knows what's the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher. You weren't able to maintain decorum. The children weren't learning. What do you want from the guy? He was doing his job as an administrator. The main priority is to the students, not to the teacher. Now, this is a very bitter pill, I have to tell you, having worked in a school, for a teacher to discover that the main priority is the students to make sure that they're learning and not the teacher is sort of a bit of a disincentive to hire or to go into a career of Jewish education, because you normally think that there are certain employee rights, but they are.
This wouldn't happen. This wouldn't happen. You can't fire somebody in the middle of you hired them, giving them a contract for a year as a teacher. You have to pay them out.
Well,
regardless if they're
when you
garbage
give
or not.
right, so when you give someone a contract, you have to honor the contract. Usually a contract would have terms that if for whatever reason there has to be, well, even in a contract, what if there's termination for cause?
Exactly.
What if they find child pornography on the Rebbe's laptop or whatever, right?
For cause of them.
For cause you don't have to pay, even when there is a contract. Now, in a situation where there's not gross
Or it's
misconduct,
blurry. You can't make that.
but the kids are not learning and the parents are complaining, and these are not overly privileged parents. Okay, these are normal parents, and they complain. My kid's not comes home. He doesn't know what parsha it is. He doesn't know the basics of the Gemara, like what's going on in that classroom. So in that situation, then that could also be potentially with cause. If the Rebbe wants to take the school to, it could be that built into the contract, maybe the school would want to avoid that kind of conflict, so they would agree to pay him out. It'll be less expensive or whatever.
Or offer them a package.
Offer him a
We're gonna
package.
Fire you for cause, but you know what? Take 2/3, take a half, take a couple months. whatever.
All right, let's take, well, it's almost 6:40. So we won't take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, but it is worthwhile looking into this whole idea of the main priority being the students. And therefore you can fire a teacher, even if he's a good teacher, but you can find someone better. That's also a bitter pill. That's also a bitter pill.
The teacher's been with you for 20 years because if you know hot shot coming up, who's even better.
That's right.
So then it's severance time.
Yeah.
Where you think so? You would think. Well, you can't fire someone who's good if he's good. But you're saying someone's better here, you're allowed to tank him.
Yeah.
You have to pay the guy for the whole year if you get rid of him. Find a better teacher.
Probably. Yeah. If he hasn't done anything wrong. All right, we're going to be off next week. He's going to be visiting mom. So Let me wish you a good Shabbos and a good next week.